Welcome back to the Experience podcast. And we have another incredible guest today. And I can't say enough about this guest being a true inspiration to everything as far as mindset or training or just as far as values. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you guys Mr. Jim Miller, aka A10.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. So Jim, tell everyone a little bit about who you are, if they don't know, a little bit about your background and why you're on the Experience today.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I'm a father and a husband. I've got 4 children. They're all about like 5 years apart, a little over 5 years apart. So it's pretty intense. But I fight in the UFC. I've been in the UFC since 2008, and I just recently tied for the most fights in UFC history at 27 with Matt Hughes, Frank Mir, and Michael Bisping. And I've been fighting since 2005, for me, fighting was kind of one of those things just to give it a shot, and to one, train so I could learn how to defend myself, even though I'd really never been in a fight. One little stupid scrap. But just to be able to defend myself and to be able to do something different. The way that I was raised was to kind of be well-rounded, to be able to be capable of doing pretty much anything. I mean, to this day, my dad can pretty much fix or make anything. That's kind of, he's not a very good teacher. Every time you had to do something, he was always the one doing it, and he'd push you out of the way. When I was 14 years old trying to help him fix a car, and I had my skinny little forearms and hands trying to reach down, and he's trying to take these big meaty paws and get them into these tiny little spots. And he wouldn't let you do it, but he kind of showed, my siblings and I that you could do it. And, if you set your mind to it and did a little reading basically and read up on it and kind of figured it out. And then my mother is probably the hardest worker I've ever met in my life, and I've met a lot of very successful people and very, very hard workers, but she's definitely at on another level when it comes to that. And my dad's tough, but my mom's tougher. She raised 4 kids of her own and working full time a lot and stuff like that. So it was, I definitely had a good upbringing that kind of helped me, transition to MMA.
That's awesome. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree when it comes to work ethic, I guess, in your family. If you could tell somebody starting out, being, that you didn't really have that much of a MMA background, what would be something, 3 things that you would tell somebody that's maybe trying to get started with MMA, things they would focus on that maybe helped you along the way?
The 2 of those are really easy. Every time that my brothers and I would go wrestle, our dad would tell us 2 things: have fun and try your hardest. And that was it. He wasn't telling us to go out and to win every wrestling match. He wasn't getting mad at us if we lost. The only times he'd get kind of, fired up, and he never really did it with me. He did it with my brothers a little bit, and kind of, yelled at them a little bit while they were wrestling. It's because they weren't wrestling to their best. They weren't wrestling to their full potential, and because their minds weren't in it. So those 2 things, man, have fun. Like if you're gonna do this, I mean, jiu-jitsu and MMA and Muay Thai, boxing, all these arts, they're enjoyable. They really are enjoyable, and it's you don't have to take it to the point that a professional would. But they are fun, and I mean, if the classes aren't fun, then it's probably the place you're at. I mean, there should be a good atmosphere, and obviously everybody's there to learn and to get better. But if you're not going to enjoy yourself, there's no point in doing it. And then try your hardest, because why not? I mean, that's one of the things that I've always been pretty good at, is kind of focusing on what I'm doing at the moment. And I know that it's a little bit more difficult for a lot of people to do that, to just shut off their everyday life. They come in from work, or just had dinner with family, and then they have to leave to go to jiu-jitsu or something like that. And it can be difficult. But when you're doing something, you gotta be there. You gotta be present. And even when it's doing the monotonous drilling that you'd be doing, we always would do. When I was training under Jamie Cruz, one of the head of those black belts, we would guard pummel for way longer than we probably should have. And it's tiring, and it's just monotonous, and you sit there and you do it, but you have to be actively there, and you have to be trying to do it right every rep. And that's going to make you a better grappler. That's going to make you, better at whatever you're doing, really. Like I said, that third one is that's pretty tough. I'd say that the biggest thing that's helped me in my career is finding somebody to do it with. So if you can find a friend or a sibling or something like that that is going to be there and help you, kind of make sure you're going there when you're a little tired, or I had a long weekend or something like that, and then it's Monday night practice, and I don't really feel like going. But if you got somebody else that's ready to go, then you kind of feel obligated sometimes. So I started training with my brother Dan in first day. I mean, 2005, we walked onto the mats the first time together, and I think that first year I was probably on the mats maybe once or twice when he wasn't there. And that was one of the things that really helped me, is because I had somebody who was developing right alongside me, and we were able to push each other, and I was always trying to kind of one up the other guy, learn the same exact things you are, and on the same learning curve as you. So you're trying to learn them as well as you can while you're drilling them, so that when you start going live, you're going to catch that guy. And we've always had a good relationship and a good bit of competitive attitude between the two of us. And that's one of the biggest things that helped me is having somebody like right there with me. That, like I said, if I didn't feel like going, he was ready to go. If he didn't feel like going, I was ready to go. So you kind of egged each other on, and basically put a little pressure on the guy to show up, and we both got better for it.
I think also it goes back to maybe what you were talking about, where it's kind of like having fun with it, and being able to have your brother. I'm sure you guys had a lot of fun with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like we like I say, we were focused on training, but like we were very into what we were doing, but we were always joking. We were always giggling and laughing and cracking jokes while we'd be drilling reps, and we were focused on what we were doing physically, but we did let our minds wander a little bit, and we were the two that were having conversations while we were doing stuff.
Somehow I don't think people know that side of you like some of us do, that free will side. But I could definitely see you guys having fun on the mats. What do you think mindset-wise separated you maybe from some of the other guys on the mat? Because, being Jamie Cruz black belt, there's not too many guys that have been around the game as long as you, obviously, being as many fights that you've had in the UFC. What do you think has helped separate you mindset-wise from guys that maybe you've seen come and go throughout your career?
I think it was just the approach. My game, was kind of developed to beat my brother. Somebody who's 5 inches taller than me and 30 to 40 pounds heavier than me. But in my head, I always had this kind of model about the way that I wanted to compete or to grapple. And, I always looked at when Frank Shamrock beat Tito Ortiz. He basically made Tito tap from exhaustion. Tito's like crawling, diving on his leg, and Frank's hitting him. And he just attacked and moved and just kept going. It was never settled in a position. He was always trying to advance, always trying to land, and that was kind of the approach that I had. That's what kind of set my game apart from some of the other guys that did come up and that didn't hang around the sport or whatever. It was. I was prepared for it. I was the one on the mats. I was the one in the fight, trying to push the pace, trying to make both of us tired. Because, hey man, we're in a fight. We better get tired. Like, I don't want to go into a competition and not be breathing heavy and lose. If I'm going to lose, if I'm going to go out and I'm going to lose, I want those guys that are there coaching me, either alongside the mat or outside the cage, to have to carry me out. That's the attitude, and it's the same thing on the mats. I would just not necessarily push the intensity, because sometimes you have to be smart. You have to train with the right intensity, but it's always pushing the pace. Like I could push the pace on a 3-year-old and not hurt him.
Yeah.
At this point, and just keep making a move, and that's always been what it was, and it was like I wanted to feel that pain in my chest and pain in my lungs, after getting done with my rounds, because if I didn't, then I hadn't pushed, I hadn't developed, I hadn't grown, so really that it's kind of just that little sick, sadistic.
I think it's that with it or on it mentality. No, but it's not sick, sadistic, man. Listen, I do jiu-jitsu and I try to approach you that way. I'm a huge fan of your fighting. Even before I got to meet you, I was a huge fan of what you do in the octagon. I can go back to like one of my favorite battles that you just, the Kamal Shalarus, that you just went out there and just were relentless on him. You can talk about the Joe Lozon fight. You can talk about a million fights. The Melvin Gillard fight where he had you rocked, and then you just were so gritty and relentless that you went and just choked the life out of him. So it's, I totally can relate to, I can't relate to doing that, but I can totally relate to the mindset that you have as far as you're going with it or on it, as they say, on the shield.
Exactly,
That's,
It's cliche. It's cliche that I'm from Sparta, New Jersey, and that's kind of it. But it really is, I look at the guys in my corner, and it's hard as a corner having, I've cornered 20 UFC fights, something like that, and then probably total, double that MMA fights, and it's difficult to understand what the fighter's going through, even if it's your sibling, like it has been in my case many times, or if it's somebody that is your best friend, your training partner, all this stuff. You don't know how they feel. You don't know what's going through their head, and you don't know like what physically what's going on. So you can try to coach them, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So, like, I personally, I kind of sensory, shut down when I'm inside the cage. I don't really hear much that often. Usually when I, like, step onto the apron, the way that they light it oftentimes helps, but you really don't see outside the cage. So it's very, like, isolated. And those guys that are in my corner, they're there to carry me out, man. I mean, that's what they're there for. I don't, like I said, I don't want to be the guy that's got enough energy to go another 2 rounds to hear the other guy's name called. I'd much rather go out and just leave it all in there and have to be carried out if I'm going to lose.
You are definitely a true warrior, my man. It is an honor to watch you fight in the ring. So, being that you have this incredible mindset, how do you think that carries over into, some of your students? Because now you guys have the Miller Brothers MMA. And then also your family. You have 4 kids. I'm sure they're going to see you fight, or they're going to see videos of your fighting. How do you think that impacts, that area of your life?
For my students, I don't preach what I practice, basically. I have a set of standards that I have when I step into the cage or when I'm in competition, and it's because I have a personal contract with myself that I want everything. I want everything for myself, and with my guys, I want them to win because winning's better for your career. I mean, there are definitely fights where I probably could have won if I fought more conservatively. I know there are fights that I could have won if I made adjustments and I fought more conservatively. And when you win, you're usually making a bit more money. You're advancing your career and all this stuff. And I mean, that's what I want out of my fighters. I want them to be as successful as they can be. They don't have to have some some set of standards that they hold themselves to. I hope that when they're training, they're going to push themselves to the utmost when it's that time to do it, because it's definitely it's not something you don't push like that every practice, but when it's go time, it's go time. But yeah, I'd rather them just be as successful as they can be. Kind of the same thing with my family and kids, man. I coach Little League wrestling, and my oldest 2, my daughter and my son, they've been wrestling. My daughter, she's wrestled for 3 years. My son for 2. And I tell the same things that my dad told me: go out, have fun, try your best. And they have fun doing it when they're having fun doing it. When they're not having fun, they're not having fun. So, it's one of those things that I want them to do what they want to do, and if they're gonna compete, or pretty much if they're gonna do anything, I would like them to expect the most out of themselves, but I'd also like them to do it in the best way possible and the smartest way possible, which sometimes might be being a little conservative.
I guess you did the battles for them, in the intensity.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I sure as heck hope so.
Yeah.
They've seen a couple of my fights. I have used like my fights to kind of influence them a little bit. In that, like, oh well, you've you've seen Daddy like bleeding, like was I crying?
Toughen
That's
up.
about it.
Toughen up, kid.
Yeah, just come on. It's just a little blood. Don't worry about it.
That's awesome. So, would you ever want one of your kids? I guess obviously you answered the question, but I was gonna say any one of your kids, if they were to decide that they wanted to compete in MMA one day, would you? What would you help them on focusing on?
I would definitely help them. I don't. I'm definitely not going to drive them that way. I'm not going to. I want them to learn how to defend themselves. But MMA is as a profession, it's very unforgiving. So, and particularly the way that the sport is right now, obviously it could be a lot better in the future. When they're capable of doing it professionally, but yeah, definitely. I don't want them to do it. I've got nearly 40 fights myself, so I don't need to fight through any of my kids. So, but yeah, if they want to, like my daughter has taken, she likes jiu-jitsu and she actually likes striking as well, and she's one of those kids, and she's got like heavy legs. I mean, my oldest, she's an athlete, and if she wanted to learn how to fight, she could be pretty good at kickboxing. She'd have pretty heavy legs, and be kicking ponytails off. So, but at the same time, I don't really want her to do it unless she wants to do it. I mean, if she wants to do it, then I'll help her and help her achieve as much as I can, and but I'm never gonna drive them into it.
That's. I mean, I guess, like I said before, you did the fight for them, so I'm sure you don't want to have them do it for you. This you kind of answered my question as far as how you think your fighting career goes as far as your legacy, but you touched on it, talking about how you go in there, leaving it all out there, whether you should change your game plan or not. So I have a better question for you. What is a harder fight that you get into, the cage or being a parent?
Being a parent. I mean, you get into these battles. Sometimes, and I'm not talking about like just arguing with your kid. I'm talking about like deeper things than that. Illnesses, stuff like that. That you don't want to. That you're not planning on. That you didn't choose to. Anytime that I've stepped inside the octagon, it was by choice. Whether I was ill or injured or whatever, I did it by choice. Nobody made me do it. And there are definitely hard things that come from being a parent that are out of your control. Being a parent is definitely more difficult, and it's 24/7. I can take time off fighting and relax a little bit when it comes from that to that side of my life. But I'm always a parent, and I've had that stuff go on. Day before I left for one of my fights, my daughter had to get stitches, so it's like you're getting all ready, packing and stuff like that, and gotta go to the ER, see the plastic surgeon.
Yeah, so I guess you can't ever be prepared for that battle.
Nope.
Couple more questions for you, Jim. Again, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing with everyone. What would you say are three of your greatest achievements so far in your career or in general? Obviously, your kids being number one. We could skip that one.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not a fair question.
I mean, I think that probably number one is it's got to be the way that my peers view me. honestly. You know, I think I'm probably the most universally respected fighter among my peers. You know,
Absolutely.
I know that, you know, I've had guys come up to me. I've had guys in my weight class, potential future opponents, former opponents, guys in other weight classes come up to me and, you know, compliment me. And I've had guys who are ranked in the top 10 or heavyweight saying that they're my biggest fan. You know, you're looking at, like, the knockout division, and I'm a guy that's, you know, had a couple TKOs but never really a knockout. And they're saying that, you know, they're my biggest fan, you know, and that means a lot to me, you know. I mean, it means a lot to me because it's the way that I have carried myself in the sport and what I've done, the way I've fought, and also the way that I've done everything else, you know, and not kind of gotten into some of the other things, you know, that can kind of tarnish reputation in the sport. So I'd say that that's probably accomplished, you know, my best accomplishment. It's just the level of respect that I've gotten. You know, I think that well, I've got 27 years, so I've got 39 fights, and I've never pulled out one. I mean, that's got to be number two.
Sure.
And some, you know, I mean, there's definitely situations where I could have, but you know, it's one of those things.
Yeah, for those who don't know, you suffered from Lyme disease, and that's, I'm sure, it wasn't easy to deal with.
There have definitely been some things where it's like potentially borderline, but yeah, I mean
that's incredible.
That's something that I'm proud of as well. You know, to live this lifestyle, to be in the gym, you know, 5-6 days a week, and to be training and to be pushing yourself, and to, I mean, it's been a lot of luck not suffering a severe injury, but a lot of times it's the muscle bruises they add up too, and you know, especially traumatic injury and stuff like that could get aggravated, and yeah, to kind of pull out one is pretty good. Pretty good accomplishment on the part. But number three, I mean, I think being on the big cards that I've been on in the UFC is probably another one. You know, probably the last one there. You know, I fought on UFC 100. I fought on 155. Was supposed to be a pretty big card. 162 is a big card. What was it? I'm losing track of the numbers sometimes. I think it was 62. It was 70 something.
200 and 205 though. Hey man, those are two of the biggest events.
You know, I've been on quite a few big cards, and
yeah, definitely always a name
I've
to.
learned that.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a name to watch on the card. So 2 more questions, and then you're a free man. Who would you say are 3 people that helped influence you along the way, and how do you think that shaped you? They helped shape you into who you are.
You know, along the way, definitely my parents. You know, and I touched on a little bit before. You know, both my parents are, you know, they're tough and hard workers, and excuse me. You know, my mom had a kidney transplant, and you know, or not transplant. She donated a kidney. To. She was kind of a linchpin in what ended up being like a 7 transplant thing, you know, and she just did it to do it, to be part of it, and you know, she's up and around basically the next day and doing stuff like nothing ever happened. You know, and I've seen things happen to my dad. That's pretty much, I don't know just I've seen some crazy stuff. So, um, and he just does what he's supposed to do, and somehow wiggles out and stuff stops. But they're both amazing people, and they definitely helped me. And it's like how bad can it be? It's just another guy standing across from me. It's like I'm not doing something that's really all that crazy. You get beat up, you get beat up. It's really not that bad when it comes down to it. So, my brother Daniel, he definitely has helped me more than anybody along the way, and he's pretty much been in my corner for every one of my fights. And the only times that he hasn't been in my corner was when he was fighting either like right before me or right after me. He's definitely been a huge influence. I think I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for me. I've had so many good coaches along the way. So many guys that have helped me. From Jay Cruz and Johnson, Birdman, and Brian McLaughlin. Those are like my jiu-jitsu guys, and I've had my striking coaches. I think that I've definitely been molded by some of the greats that came along, and I think that like combined the attitudes of Fedor and BJ Penn and Henzo and Vanderlei, Chuck Liddell, and those guys, like
the old school, the OGs.
Yeah, man, I fell in love with the sport. When I was like 19 years old. I was a couple of years before I started training, and I remember like finding videos, scouring the internet, finding these videos of these guys that fought, and when they fought, they fought to give it all, to fight as hard as they could. It definitely shaped me in the way that I tried to approach the fight, the fight game.
All right, man. So I'm gonna give you the last one here. I know that you don't have any fights coming up because you just previously fought, but what are some things that Jim Miller likes to do when he is not in camp, and where can people catch you or follow you?
Usually it's definitely gotten harder with all the extracurriculars that come with these kids as they're getting older, man. Like swimming and tennis and all these other things. But I'm not like a TV guy. I'm not a movie guy. I think the last time that I've seen a movie in a theater was Inglourious Bastards. I think was the last movie I've seen. My wife and I
a long time ago.
Yeah, we went on like a date. Yeah, it was a while ago. I do stuff. I build stuff, and it's kind of it's the same thing with like the martial arts. You're always building and making things better and learning new things. And that's really what the martial arts are about. Is like expanding your knowledge and then also fine tuning the things that you have. So that same approach is kind of the way that it carries over into all my other hobbies. And I haven't been able to do that much of it lately, but I just brewed up 20 gallons of beer for a barbecue that we're having this weekend. So if you can make it out to New Jersey, come on by. So I brew beer, and what I like about it is, when you're making something that I enjoy, I like beer, but then it's also something to share. One of the cool parts is kind of making fixing your own equipment, and doing stuff like that, which is pretty cool part of it. I do woodworking. I like to hunt and fish, and, gardening and all sorts of stuff, man. I try to just get my hands dirty and make something, and usually it's something that I can share with people. And that's really what it comes down to is something that my friends and family can enjoy as well. So there's too many hobbies.
No, that's cool though. But hey, guys, like, so he's talking about all this stuff. You can, on his hands-on podcast, he talks a lot about this. I wanted, give you a little plug on that because I love listening to it. It's always a good laugh, and so definitely people should check that out. But Jim, I can't thank you enough for coming on today, giving me your time. And I hope to see you soon, and we'll talk, guys. Another episode of The Experience in the books. Honor to have the great Jim Miller with us today.